Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Joining me is Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inscriber. Um, Unfortunately, Gail will not be joining us this evening, but so it's going to be Daniel and yours truly for this particular episode. What's going on, Daniel?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen?
I'm sorry for the delay for those who are checking us out live on YouTube. Let's just say a whole lot of messes going on behind the scenes, including some breaking stuff with pound for pound box report. But anyways, for those who are checking us out, pound for pound box report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blogs, site, etc. Discussing all things boxing. The modern wisdom boxing is good. We will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to check out all things pound for pound boxing report, please go to the site p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so at p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will check out links to where to catch the podcast on all platforms, most, if not all podcast platforms, um, be it Apple podcast, be it Google Podcast, be it Spotify, Anchor, wherever you catch your podcast, wherever you're listening to this show on any podcast platform. Also, links to find Pound for Pound Box Report, the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, the IG page, and I would say the Twitter page, but unfortunately, Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page has been hacked, and it was as a result it was ultimately suspended. I'm working behind the scenes. Um, to make sure to get a new account for Pound Boxing Report on Twitter. So my apologies for that. I'm going to give a full warning of right here and now. Um, if you wish to donate to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can do so on the site, PayPal donation links. If you PayPal and Cash Me, links to PayPal and Cash Me, Pound for Pound Box Reports account there. If you're looking to get your body right for the summer, check out the link to BODI, um, on body, BODI. At the very least, check out the free 2 week trial. If you're on body, also there is a free 21-day option as well, where you get free access to any and all programs on BODI. If you're into weightlifting, I suggest you check out Lift 4 and Lift More. If you're looking for challenging functional workouts, I suggest you check out 6 weeks of the work. The P90X series 1, 2, and 3, they still there. Um, Bar Blend, if you're looking for more workout program for the morning meltdown, or if you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 rounds, 6 weeks program, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of weightlifting and resistance work. Um, so many programs for any and all suitable interests. More. If I had to do a rundown all of them, I can go on for another 20 minutes. Anyway, let's get things going with this particular episode. Again, my apologies for those who are checking us out live on YouTube. Let's get through these fights. A lot of fights that went down this weekend, and let's start with the showcase matchup, and that was the grudge match, I should say, between David Benavidez and Caleb Plant up at super middleweight. Benavidez, former two-time WBC champion, Plant, former IBF champion. The two did not like each other heading into this bout. Um, the reason I named this particular episode "Leaving No Doubts" because that's what uh, Benavidez did ultimately. Plant had some success in the first half of the fight, Daniel, but the criticism of Plant is that he fades, and one of my criticism is that there were those who thought that Plant could outbox David Benavidez, and I was saying how. Um, it's not that Caleb Plant is not a bad boxer, but I never considered him an elite boxer. Once Benavidez was able to hurt him in the middle rounds, you could just tell, and he slowly warmed down, dominated the second half, hurt him. Um, if it was not for the referee, Benavidez would have probably stopped Plant. We'll get into that discussion in a bit. But yeah, overall thorough performance, pretty dominant on my card. I had it 10-2. And yeah, David Benavidez, he showed his superiority in this fight.
Plant did have a good amount of success in the first half of the fight because one of the flaws, unfortunately, that David Benavidez has is that he is a slow starter, and the way Plant was moving and he was countering combinations early on was getting success pretty early. But the thing about it is, if David is a fighter that, yeah, he starts slow, but once he gets his motor going, good luck. And that's what happened. That's from the seventh round to eighth round on, David was able to wear wear Plant down with his legs and then land. I think his punch, probably his best one, was the left hook. In the latter half of the fight, you could tell he hurt Plant at least 3 or 4 times. There's probably one time where I think it may be the one you're thinking about where Kenny Bayless should have stopped it, but he didn't. And then but ultimately he did finish the job, especially late in the fights. You could tell Plant wasn't able to keep up. He wasn't able to move as much. And I said, David didn't show any signs of fatigue later on. If anything, they actually benefited him because all but 2 of his fights up to that point were won by knockout. And so there was always, can David really go distance against top echelon fighter in the division, which Plant, say what you want, technically is. So he was able to prove that, and now it's going to be a situation. What do you do with David after this win? Because Plant was his biggest rival as far as who you can say would be right below Canelo at super middleweight. So he's cleared that out of the way. Now we have to see how the future holds.
Yeah, let's talk about the future right quick. In the immediate aftermath, during the post-fight interview, Benavidez said, Canelo, let's do it. I'm tired of waiting. Benavidez is going to be named WBC mandatory contender, right? But his promoter has gone on record in saying that up next for Benavidez is a fight against WBA regular champion David Morrell. For those who have not seen Morrell, heck of a fighter, right? Southpaw, tall, angular, can box, really slick in the ring with power. What would you like to see? Would you like to see an eventual fight between Benavidez and the redhead, or does it tickle your fancy to see a fight between Benavidez and Morrell maybe this summer, early fall?
Well, that's if engaging it, and if I could have it, I want it. Yeah, it would be against Canelo. But unfortunately, I'm also a realist in the situation, and until Canelo fully retracts his statement where he said he will never fight another Mexican for a world title, it's a moot point. Unfortunately, when it comes with him and Benavidez, Morrell, that's an interesting option because there, like I said, 168. There isn't a lot. There isn't a lot right now that you can actually put him up against somebody like David and have him win out. Morrell's an interesting fight because Morrell's young. You know he's motivated, and he's also chomping. He's also the one people chomping at the bit to get Canelo. So it's a very interesting fight. I'm actually surprised a little bit. I actually shouldn't be considering how he does his business, but I'm actually a little bit surprised that Bubu Andrade didn't get into this little sweepstakes because Andrade does have the length and he does have the boxing skill that can bother Benavidez. But we've never really seen, unfortunately, Benavidez be tested, really, really be tested at that point. Plant was the closest thing to it, but once Plant lost his legs, it was over. So Morel's it is an interesting fight. I'm kind of actually surprised that PBC's gonna launch out to Morel, but at the end of the day, I think it's just trying to see who PBC can actually get Canelo to fight with.
Final question before we move on. We all know Canelo's the quote unquote man in the division, right? Undisputed champion, blah blah blah. Who would pose the biggest? Who would pose the biggest threat to Alvarez at this point? Benavidez or Morel?
If we have to judge from the losses that Canelo has taken, which were to Floyd and which were to Dimitri Bivol, it would be somebody that's more of a boxer that can bother him a bit more than somebody that prides himself probably being more of a puncher like David has. So David to me presents a similar situation that would have happened if Canelo fought would have fought Zerda if Zerda would have beat Bivol. And because we in the boxing circles, we have heard those gym stories involving Canelo and Zerda. And David does have the length to bother him, and he does have a little bit of the size. We have to remember David was a heavy kid early on in his life. He had to slim down to get to 168, and we have to remember it's also getting to a point where 168 is no longer going to be feasible to him. So that would have been an interesting challenge, but from a pure boxing standpoint, it probably would have been Morel, but unfortunately, the lack of experience is what would probably hurt him most against Canelo, and that's probably the same situation that you have with David too.
I mean, listen, I'm on record saying that I don't think that Canelo wants any part of Benavidez. Um, we all know his future plans. He's going to fight John Ryder on May 6th. Following that, he's going to shoot for the rematch against Bivol. Does not make sense for Benavidez to wait around on Canelo. So if there's an opportunity to get him a big fight, a visible opportunity, why not take it? That's why he took this fight with Plant. That's why he's going to take the fight with Morel. And after this, maybe should he beat Morel, maybe Charlo, maybe Andrade. The bottom line is that at the very least, Benavidez has earned the opportunity to get a fight with Canelo. It's sad that Alvarez doesn't have a desire to face Benavidez because it would be a heck of a fight, right? With that being the backdrop, Benavidez has to do something, and it looks like next up for him is going to be a fight with the WBA regular champion Morel. And let's move on to undercard bout here. And boy, did this fight get a lot of commentary Saturday night on Boxing Twitter. We're talking about the fight between Chris Colbert and Jose Valenzuela. Colbert was put on the deck early on. First half of the fight, Valenzuela pretty much in control. Colbert started to rally at parts during the second half of the fight. Colbert ended up getting decision by 1 point, I believe, on all three scorecards.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna say, if you believe that Valenzuela defeated Colbert, I'm not going to argue against that, right? But all the uproar and the favorite R word that loves to get used in the boxing community, robbery, the other word, controversial, blah blah blah. I don't see it. I can buy Valenzuela winning, but people are acting like he just blew Chris Colbert out the water. I didn't see it that way.
It was a fight of two halves. Valenzuela did dominate the first half of the fight, and Chris Colbert showed out a little bit in the second half of the fight. The main difference, and I think the main reason why a lot of boxing Twitter, because looking at it now, why a lot of the boxing world did react the way they did is because they see a knockdown. They see how can he this guy win when he was the one that got knocked down. But at the end of the day, that's could show a little bit of the skill of Chris Colbert that you can make up being knocked down. We have to. I'm not. I'm not saying this is a perfect example, but I'm just giving an example. We have to remember Pacquiao Marquez won. Pacquiao knocked him down what? If I remember, 3 or 4 times early on in the fight, and Marquez willed that fight to be a draw. Willed it to a point where those he negated those knockdowns. That happens. So that can happen in a fight. But the main situation is that there were a lot of rounds that were very, very close, and I communicate with either man winning. I do lean more towards Valenzuela because of that knockdown, but it's not by much. It's one of those situations where that one aesthetic makes it look more clear victory than sometimes what it actually shows when you look at the fight back with hindsight.
Colbert said that he will not give him a rematch. Do you think there will be too much of a demand, too much of pressure from the public to the point they will have to get it on again?
Yeah, they're probably gonna rematch again. I get Colbert's standpoint like, okay, I won. I shouldn't get a rematch, but you're gonna get Colbert. You're gonna get clowned day in and day out with that until you give him a rematch. And unfortunately, Colbert is not really in a position where he can brush off Valenzuela. So, because he's still recovering from his loss in a way.
Right.
So he can't really ill afford to say, "Oh no, I'm not going to give a rematch because I'm better." Do you know? Prove it again in the ring. Prove that that first half that Valenzuela had was a fluke. Otherwise, you're going to get clowned by it, and you're in a division where the top is already pretty heavy on its own. You might as well handle your business while that situation clears up.
His win over Valenzuela that took place in Vegas, right? At the same time, out in Fresno, California, you had an ESPN card. The main event was Jose Ramirez fighting Richard Commey. We will get into that shortly, and especially what Ramirez had to say in post-fight comments in regard to a possible matchup with Regis Progress, because I feel some kind of way about his comments. But let's start with the co-main, and that is unification bout at minimum weight. We've talked a lot and we've sung the praises of Seniesa Estrada, Miss Super Bad herself. She fought a unification bout against Tina Rupprecht. WBA, WBC 105 belts were on the line. Estrada won, and she won by comfortable margin, and she dominated the second half of the fight. But here's the thing, Daniel. Despite the domination, despite the clear-cut victory, there were moments in the first half where if you wanted to be a critic of her, she gave evidence, right? Because the defense was not sharp. There were a couple occasions where she got hit flush on the button with some right hands. As Estrada is, as the level of competition raises for Estrada. Um, are we seeing some of the vulnerabilities of women's super bad?
Those were one of my concerns when I was watching this fight because her opponent were landing pretty decent shots, particularly overhand rights, and they were landing clean with with unfortunately no concern defense at all when it came to Seniesa and those exchanges. Now, one can argue that she did that because her opponent wasn't hurting her, so she could do it. But at the same time, the bad part about it is if you start developing that habit, that becomes an actual habit, and that becomes an actual weakness over time. And you cannot do that with with somebody like Seniesa because yeah, you're 105 pounds. You're gonna keep going up in weight. You're probably gonna finish your career at 115, and people are only gonna get stronger. Now, skills wise, yeah, she cleared out, especially the second half of the fight. But you cannot start developing the bad habits early on, especially in the position that she's in, where she's got this new deal with Top Rank. They're really focusing on her. They're really pushing her. You can ill afford to have a subpar showing that may have other people thinking otherwise. Because we have to remember, there's another unification that she can get lined up really quick, and it's a similar situation. But if you give her opponent a blueprint to where she gets hurt, that's bad news.
You mentioned another unification that could be lined up, and of course, you're talking about your Costa Valle, who on the same night as Estrada's win over Rupprecht, actually close to an hour after the finish of Seniesa Estrada's win, your Costa Valle in her adopted home country of Costa Rica, right? She defended her belts with an easy decision over Jessica Salazar. It's clear at this point that Valier and Estrada are the top two ladies at 105 pounds. They've exchanged plenty of back and forth trash talk on social media and on interviews. The question on the table is, when will we see these two ladies fight? It's one of the best matchups, regardless of gender, regardless of division in boxing. Both are at the top of their game. I would pay to see it. Will it happen in 2023?
There isn't much left for Seniesa at this point where she stands right now. So yeah, I would definitely like to see it in 2023. And we know from our own circle that the other side is probably chomping at the bit to get this going. So I could see it early on going on 2023, maybe in the latter half. And you know, this is just me speculating, but maybe we could probably see it in an all women's top ranked card. Because remember, they still have Michaela Mayer, the business with Michaela Mayer and Bumgarner to deal with. So that's going to be something that can easily set up over time. Just got to get the right build, got to make sure that she gets the right training, and most of all, she fixes those mistakes early on. Because one mistake can ruin a lot of plans.
A lot of folks will make her the favorite in a bout against Yocosta Valle. But for those who have not seen Valier, excuse me, the woman can fight, and she cannot make those defensive lapses against Valier, who's fast, who's accurate, and has some decent power of her own. Um, yeah, if you force me to pick right now, I would pick Estrada in a fight against Valle, but Valle, I'm telling you right now, will give her a heck of a tussle. That's just my opinion. On the main event here, you had Jose Ramirez, we all know the story. Um, Former unified champion. He lost in a fight for undisputed against Josh Taylor a while back. Has been pretty much inactive since. Um, he fought Richard Commey and was a WBC eliminator. Okay, he got the win, stopped him in 11 rounds. Boom. No need to go in depth about the fight itself.
Yes,
Let's get to the post fight. Let's get to the post fight, Daniel, where he was asked about progress, and there was a pretty much a theme throughout the entire broadcast. They had a pre-fight interview with Ramirez talking about progress and how he has twice turned down an opportunity to fight Rigorou. In the post fight, he made this argument as like he made the argument that Progress, get your act together on a financial tip. Let's come together. Let's make this fight. And my reaction is, wait a minute, sir. Wait a minute, sir. Who are you? I know that you're a former unified champion, and I know that you're used to making a certain amount of dollars, right? But who are you to make these kind of demands when you no longer have the belts? I know he's basically requesting that he gets seven figures for that fight. No, 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 no. You don't have that kind of pull. It doesn't matter that you used to making $1 million+. You don't run things here. I was offended. I was offended by the pre-fight interview where they really challenged him about turning down the fight with Progress, and I was even more offended by his post-fight interview. He comes off as elitist. He comes off as high and mighty.
Ah, man. When I saw that, I'm like, no, what are you doing, Jose? Like, what are you doing, Jose? Because it's one thing to do it in your hometown, because that's the advantage that he had because he was doing it in Fresno. But like it or not, Senor Ramirez, you're not the one with the belt. Rougarou is. And we have to keep in mind, Rougarou, he was getting ducked before he got the belt back. So for Rougarou, this is not a foreign situation. This is not something new to him. But unfortunately, the prospect of Ramirez. Okay, first, if you're gonna come out this after a fight where you came out strong, but you let Commey come back into the fight by outboxing you because you went in too early to try to get a knockout. You did. You got it with the body shot because unfortunately Commey has fought a lot of wars, but at the same time, it doesn't look good on your end that it took you that long. We all expected that fight to be over within 2 or 3 rounds. Remember, we figured, okay, Ramirez was going to knock him out.
And Commey was able to hit him a good bit in the first half of that fight.
With the right hand flush, and he didn't try to do it, and he never did it when he was in a phone booth. He did it at a distance.
Right.
Because he was using the jab. That's the part that bothers me when it comes to Ramirez in this situation. You cannot try to dictate terms per se when you pretty much let an opponent that you were supposed to just wash, like completely and utterly wash. You not only let him back into the fight, there was a point in time where he actually hurt you a little bit. So it's just a bad way all around. I get it from that standpoint, but that's more on his manager. That's more on Bob. You're the people that got him these purses.
It smacks of entitlement, Daniel.
It
sheer
does.
entitlement on his behalf.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. It does. And that's the bad part of it. You got you. I agree. You got used to having this fight, and you got used to getting these purses, but at the same time, you actually had the benefit of the doubt of having two belts while you were making that money. You don't have the belts anymore, and you've already given two different stories about why you didn't want to fight to get one of them. So it doesn't look good. I want to say I wouldn't say I wouldn't call it elitism. That what he's gone into it. I would call it I would call it a little bit of bouginess. That's what it is to me. Ramirez is acting a little bit bougie when he can ill afford to be bougie.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last part, Daniel?
Oh no, I said Ramirez was acting a little bit bougie at a time where he can ill afford to be acting bougie.
And keep in mind, not only did he turn down an opportunity to fight Ruguru for the vacant WBC belt at the end of last year, and turned down enough instead and turned his back on the negotiations for a fight this year when Ramirez first won the WBC belt. Progress was his mandatory contender, calling for a fight with this dude, and yet he hemmed and hawed, and the fight wasn't made. So let me correct myself. It wasn't twice that he's said no to a fight with Progress. It's three times. All that says to me is that he really does not want to fight this dude. And based on how he looked against Commey, he wouldn't beat him. He wouldn't beat him. And in his heart of heart, he knows it. Despite what he was saying during the post fight, he don't want that smoke with Progress. He just don't.
At least I'll admit at least when Ramirez had the belt, you you knew there was a little bit unfortunately internal politics because of Bob and Al. Because I think that was when Ruguru was still more or less involved with PBC. He's free of that now. So there's little to no excuse on one end to not get this done. Except if except it looks like it is gonna be on Mr. Ramirez.
100%, 100%. I think that ultimately he's not going to fight him, and look for him to rather shoot for the winner of the fight in June between Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez. I just said it and I'll say it again. He doesn't want any part of Progress. And I'm waiting for evidence to prove me wrong. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet. Last fight before we get into the news here, and look, Lawrence Okolie, close to a year layoff, returned to the ring to defend that WBO cruiserweight title against David Light. Now, I'll admit here that I wasn't able to see the fight fully, but I saw enough highlights, and both you, Daniel, and Gail have kind of politely chided me in terms of my criticisms of one, Mr. Okolie, um, and his style. And I'll say here, my criticisms have been justified, particularly off of this performance, because, yeah, Okolie, he boxed, he won, and he won by decision, but far too much grabbing, far too much clutching, no real action in this fight. I say that he's not one of the most appealing fighters out there in terms of style. He doesn't bring any real excitement. He proved me absolutely right given his performance against Light.
Sadly, you are correct, unfortunately, in this instance, because this fight was I don't like to say that sometimes a few certain fighters and certain fights tend to be a chore to watch. This felt like a chore. I'll leave it at that. I only watched all the highlights, and even the highlights felt like a chore. I'll admit this is Lawrence's style. Like he's won. There's a reason he's a champion because of that stuff. But also, the division isn't exactly stacked at the moment. After Usyk cleared it out, so there isn't a lot of top tier challengers out there in the cruiserweight division that you can say, okay, this is top notch. But in this case, oh, man, I felt bad. I felt bad watching the highlight because I'm just like, oh, this is just bad.
I said what I said about Okolie, and I'm sticking to it. Let's move on. Some news here. One of the more highly anticipated bouts of the year is a fight between unified junior featherweight champion Stephen Fulton and multiple division champion Naoya. In a way, they were supposed to fight on May 7th. Inoue had to. Uh, uh, the fight was postponed due to a knee injury by the monster. Well, I'll say 36 hours ago, um, it was announced, and Inoue announced it on his IG. Top Rank made the announcement as well, is that the fight has been rescheduled for July 25th. It's going to happen in Tokyo. I'm just glad that one, Inoue is well enough to fight, and I'm glad the fight is finally going to happen. Um, Boxing, if you're a boxing fan, you have to be amped, you have to be pumped up, and there's going to be a lot of people who's going to be up early in the morning, Daniel, whether it's in the States checking the fight on out on ESPN Plus, or just around the world checking the fight out on whatever streaming service possible available. Yeah, Fulton in a way is back on. Let's do this.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Wait
Wait
a
a
minute.
minute.
That's better because I thought it was I was gonna neck off a little bit, but that one of the main worries when the injury news came out was that it was gonna be a long one, and that could derail a lot of things. Luckily, it's not long, and it doesn't break up anything in the fights. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for MJ because he's losing a good unification fight with Fulton, but this is the fight we want. This is the fight that people want, and even after wait like a couple of months, it's good. Let Inoue recover because this is a fight where you want both fighters to be at 100%, as close to 100% as they can. And if they try to rush it or if they extended it to a point where Fulton had to take another fight, that would just delay things further, and we probably wouldn't have seen the fight this year. I'm glad this happened. I'm glad that it's going to go on as planned. And if you can, just get your passports ready.
Absolutely. And during the last episode that we recorded live a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how the negotiations between unified heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk, WBC champion Tyson Fury, has been playing out like an episode of General Hospital, right? Um, Fury kept upping the demands here and there. Usyk kept accepting, only for Fury to make more demands and whatnot. Well, in the time between that episode and this evening, turns out that the fight is not going to happen on April 29th. It looks like Usyk is moving on, uh, negotiating a fight against WBA regular champion Daniel Dubois. Don't know what is on the cards for Tyson Fury, but your reaction to the failed negotiations, you've been saying for the longest, Daniel, that Fury doesn't want any part of Usyk. Um, did his attitude, did his increasing demands, financial and otherwise, was that more of a sign to you that at the end of the day, despite how much Fury loves to run his mouth, he really doesn't want to fight the Ukrainian?
Um, I'll gladly take the soapbox that you have with Lawrence Okolie, and I'll happily stand on mine here. I, I have been stating not only for months but for years that Tyson Fury does not want to fight Alexander Usyk because he knows he cannot beat Alexander Usyk. His usual tricks do not work on Alexander Usyk. And lo and behold, when you had the chance to make that fight, especially in the situation that Usyk's in, because he's thinking about his loved ones back in his home country that's still at war, every single thing, he kept moving the goalposts. Even up to the point where we talked about the money. Yeah, we agreed that Fury brings in the fans, but Usyk had the majority of the belts. When he surrendered that, and Fury kept finding different ways to wiggle out of it. That just shows he doesn't want the fight. He wants opponents that he knows he can beat, which should be very surprising to me, considering that we have to remember how Tyson Fury came into the world stage. No, not a lot of people really picked him to beat Vladimir Klitschko, when he was the mandatory to fight him. But he wound up winning. He took the challenge and he wound up winning. And all his riches that came afterwards are a result of that. So on one hand, I'm very surprised that Fury isn't taking on a challenge, but then on the other side, I'm not really surprised, because we also have to remember that this is somebody that does deal with mental health issues, addiction issues, depression issues. And we've already seen that part of the reason why we never got the rematch was because Fury fell apart a little bit mentally because of all that came at him after winning that fight. And it could be a similar situation here, because he sees an opponent that he can't beat with his usual tricks. And because he can't beat him with his usual tricks, it's a point where, sadly, if you can't beat them to it, you see your world crumbling. So you rather avoid that situation. And unfortunately, the WBC, as a sanctioning body, will be more than happy to aid him in that.
They're not going to fight in April. Will we ever see them fight? Period.
Oh, no. The only, not even as an exhibition. No.
Damn. Never ever?
Nope. I personally, I don't see it. I don't see it happening as long, because that it would. The best time to do it is now, because you're the top two dogs in the division. Everybody else is either in a position where they're still recovering from losing to one of you, like Deontay Wilder, or they're very young, like Daniel Dubois, or in many ways, some people can still see them as unproven, like George Joyce, even though he had a great victory.
And let me say, correction here, Daniel. I said that there's no immediate plans for Fury. Excuse me. I am hearing rumblings. Word on the street is that Fury actually could fight Joe Joyce next, but continue on.
Yeah, but that's the main point. Like, you have everybody else is still unproven to a point, and we have to remember, like I mentioned, how Fury, his mind fell apart. Unfortunately, after winning Klitschko, He never lost the WBO title, the WBA title, or the IBF title. He never lost them in the ring. So, as somebody who's as prideful as Tyson Fury, who comes from a family that's as prideful as his, why wouldn't you try to go after the belts that you never really lost in the ring? The things that happen outside of the ring to you that made you lose those belts. Why not go after it? You don't see any issues other than the fact that you feel like you cannot actually beat the person that holds them.
News broke last night that the ordered fight between Eimantis Stanionis and Vergil Ortiz has been postponed for a second time. They were supposed to fight originally on March 18th. Stanionis had to pull out because of emergency appendectomy. In this instance, Ortiz had to withdraw, or the fight had been postponed due to a reoccurrence of rhabdomyolysis. It's a condition that Ortiz has suffered from before. Um, he had to withdraw from a bout last summer as a result of it. The fact that it's happening again, Daniel, inside of a year, um, caused a pause here. Signs for concerns in terms of the physical status of Vergil Ortiz.
This is a little bit concerning, unfortunately, when it comes to Vergil, because the first time this happened to him, we weren't sure he was never going to be welterweight again.
Excuse me. I mentioned that this has happened before. He had to pull out of a fight spring, early summer last year. I think it was against McKinson. I think they eventually fought each other,
Yes.
and Ortiz scored a stoppage, ninth round stoppage over McKinson. But yeah, continue on, please.
Yeah, that's the main worry, unfortunately, when it comes to Vergil. We were worried the first time this happened that was it at a point where he can't make welterweight anymore, that he has to go to 154 by force. And the same questions now are creeping up again. Is this a situation where Vergil is pushing himself too much to maintain and try to stay at 147, and his body is refusing at a certain point? Hopefully that's not the case. Now, hopefully it takes care of it right away and they're able to get this fight in, because this is because they're challenging for one of the WBA belts. This is David's opportunity to crash the Errol Spence Bud Crawford party. And we already know his stablemate, Alexis Rocha, is trying to do the same thing on Bud's side, trying to crash the party. So I hope he recovers very well. It's sad to see when fighters that have good hearts like Vergil go through something like this. Hope he recovers well. Hope we get the fight rescheduled and goes through, because I'll be honest, I'm being a little bit greedy. I want him and Boots Ennis by the end of the year, because I feel that that's the collision course that we're waiting on. And the sooner we can get Vergil versus Boots, the better.
Yeah. Um, Early word is that this fight could be rescheduled again for the summer, but the first concern is for the physical well-being of Vergil Ortiz. As I mentioned, this is the second time he's had to shut things down to because of this illness, and um, I want a full examination. I want full time for him to recover. He's put it on the fact again that it's the result of basically overtraining. Well, first time I can give an excuse for that, but this time, um, yeah, if it happens for a second time, to me, his camp has to reevaluate things from a physical perspective. That he's putting himself physically in this kind of position to suffer from this illness, and something has to change for him moving forward because he is a heck of a talent. Um, Potential there. He can be a world champion. Um, I too would like to see him fight Boots Ennis. I would also love to see him fight either Crawford or Spence by the end of this year. And you don't want to get those potential matches ruined because of a miscalculation. Let's just put it that way in terms of his training, in terms of how he prepares for a fight. Before we move on to preview some fights for the weekend, Daniel here. Any other news that you've been hearing in these boxing streets?
Nothing so far because I think everybody's taking a break for WrestleMania weekend, and they're just prepping for Canelo.
Yeah. So let's move on to preview some fights here. Um, we'll save the big fight, the more high-profile fight for last. But on ESPN, you have a fight for the vacant WBO belt at 126 pounds, right? Robeisy Ramirez, who hardcore heads know had a lot of hype when he defected Cuba and turned pro. Well, in his pro debut, he happened to lose. But after that, he's gotten progressively better and better and better every time you've seen him in the ring. And he's fighting and living up to his potential. He's going to fight Isaac Dogboe, former 122-pound champion. And in my opinion, Daniel, Dogboe has never fully recovered fully from that first fight, from that title loss, right, to Emmanuel Navarrete. That first fight to Emmanuel Navarrete in December 2018 when Dogboe lost the junior featherweight title. He was beat up, punished in that defeat. Fought Navarrete for a second time, 5 months later, punished again. And something has been missing from him, not just physical, but for me, it's mental. There's a barrier there. And he's with the new trainer now, Hunter, out there in DC. Um, he's starting to gain things slowly back, but on recent form, Dogboe, I don't see a level of great improvement, right? If anything, I've seen a stagnation, if not a kind of slight deterioration over the years. While Robeisy, uh, uh, he is improving. As I said, he is on the ascend, getting better and better with each fight. As a result, the fact that Robeisy can really, really box when he puts his mind to it, I make him the favorite here. Putting my official prediction, I think he's going to win this fight by decision, and rather comfortable decision.
Oh, yeah, I could see Roseby winning pretty handily because unfortunately, Dogboe to me is in the what I would call the Leo Santa Cruz position where you're good at one weight, but circumstances have made you move away from it, but it doesn't. You may not really be good for that weight. And that's what I felt when I saw Dogboe in his first fight at 126. Hopefully, he gives Roseby a good fight, but we know Roseby, he's been in the camp, he's been with Shakur, so he knows how to be a little bit more slick. I can see him winning and winning comfortably.
And the final fight that we're going to preview before we sign thing off, the return of one Anthony Joshua. We know the story of AJ. He's coming off of 2 straight defeats to Alexander Usyk. The rematch with Usyk, which took place in August of last year. Post-fight, let's just say Joshua lost his way. Visibly upset on one end, and then he grabbed the mic, and then he just went on a rant that was kind of not coherent. He's apologized for that. moved on. He's changed trainers from Robert Garcia to help me out. Derek James. Um,
Hmm.
he said during the pre-fight that if he loses, he's going to fight Jermaine Franklin. Excuse me, but he said that in response to a comment that if he were to lose to Franklin, yeah, that he would retire. He's retracted that statement. But anyway, Franklin is coming off of a competitive fight against Dillian White. Some people felt he won that fight against Dillian White. Despite of how Franklin looked in that fight, and from what I've been reading, he's really in shape for this fight against Anthony Joshua. You have to make AJ the favorite. He's the more talented fighter. If he even shows the form that we saw from the first 8 rounds, 9 rounds against Usyk, before Usyk went into blitzkrieg mode in the championship rounds of that rematch, you have to go with AJ to win this upcoming fight against Franklin.
This is the rebound fight. This is a fight to rebound you, to make sure that you can get yourself back up. This is obviously the equivalent to Deontay versus. Well, I think you're forgetting the Norse guy. He knocked him out pretty badly, but it's pretty much the same thing. It is the same thing. Oh, Helenius, sorry. I get Robert
Robert
Helenius.
Helenius, yeah.
But it's the same thing. But it's very much a domestic fight. This would have been Dillian White if he won that. If he would have won against Franklin, but unfortunately, this is more of a test to where AJ is mentally, because you didn't give yourself enough time to learn the skills that Robert Garcia can teach you. You need it. It's been my credo. You need at least 3 fights with a new trainer in order to fully incorporate his training methods, his style into your repertoire. AJ's not doing that. Going for somebody that's more offensive, and Robert Garcia to somebody that's a little bit more defensive, and Derek James. The main point is going to be where he's at mentally. If Franklin puts him in trouble at any point, and if he falters a little bit, then you really know that AJ is just not there. Old AJ is not there. Even if he wins, which I fully expect him to. If he gets a good knockout, good.
Go ahead.
No, if he gets a good knockout, that's good. But it's the main thing to see is how he is mentally. If he doesn't show the mettle that he's at where he's supposed to be mentally, then I will start to reevaluate things if I'm AJ and his team.
One more thing before we begin to sign out. This news just broke in my head, and I actually wrote about this at ThreeKingsBoxing.com. Please check out ThreeKingsBoxing.com, your source of pure, unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire 3KB crew, 2K, the head man behind 3KB, Bo, head of media relations, who you've heard on this show numerous times. I'm a senior writer for Three Kings Boxing, all the other contributors. There was an interview in a local Mexican outlet, right, with the trainer of Jaime Munguia, Eric Morales. Now, the backstory: Munguia is seeking a fight with Gennady Golovkin for June the 10th. In this interview, Morales said that that fight is no longer on the table. He said, in his words here, paraphrasing, that he was told Golovkin is going to take an extended break, an extended hiatus. Now, Triple G, we've heard little from him. Let me correct that. He's been inactive since his trilogy loss to Canelo. Um, February, he vacated the IBF middleweight belt. March, he vacated the WBA belt. Given given the fact that he's no longer a middleweight champion, given the comments of Morales, are we on the verge of eventually seeing Gennady Golovkin call it a day? Is he taking this extended break to ponder if he wants to fight anymore?
And that has to be the answer because Triple G has never been one to just walk away from a situation where he can get a good fight, even against a young challenger, and especially since he gave up both titles. He did give up a lot of leverage when he lost those when he gave up those two titles. But the unfortunate also side effect is the situation that he's in probably reminds him of the situation that he was in the mid 2000s when he had to wait a very, very long time to try to get a fight with Felix Sturm when Felix Sturm had no intention of ever giving him that a fight. So now he's probably seen the business level at this stage where your contemporary rival has two victories on you, even though you can easily debate all three fights to say that you actually won. And unfortunately, the money isn't there really to pay what you've been accustomed to. While this sounds similar to the situation of Jose Ramirez, the difference is mainly that Golovkin was willing to challenge himself. But he's also at a stage of his career where there's not much he can do. If he goes to 168, he just runs into Canelo again. He physically can't do anything at 154. So he's stuck in this division where the other contemporary challenger in Jamal Charlo looks to be going to 168. So there really isn't a lot there that's financially lucrative enough, unfortunately, for Golovkin. He may just say this, like, you know what, let me just look at my options. Let me see if I should try to get another big fight or if I should have a last hurrah fight in Kazakhstan. Because if he's going to do that, I don't know if Kazakh culture allows it. But if he's going to do that, then make the fight with Jabanek. Even if you win, you'd be seen as a little bit of a passing of the torch fight among Kazakh fighters. But yeah, I do think he's probably evaluating. He's already in his 40s, so it's probably taking him a little bit to evaluate what his position is, because he's pretty much stayed at 160 his entire career up to this point. He could have moved up to 168 a long while ago, but the Canelo money obviously kept him at 160. So at this point, you have your money. You're frugal with how you spend it. You're not a big spender. So yeah, you can look back and reevaluate the situations. And the one thing that he did when he vacated those belts is he didn't hold them hostage in a way.
And I think we're going to end things on that note. As I said earlier, Gail was not able to make it this evening, so it's just Daniel and myself. Um, Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all things Three Kings Boxing, Three Kings Boxing, Pound for Pound Box Report, you can do so on the site P4P Boxing, P4PBoxingReport.com. If you wish to email us again, questions, thoughts, suggestions, you can do so P4PBoxing at P4PBoxingReport.com. On the site, you'll find links to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, IG, Tumblr, also links to where you can donate, and also links to the fitness site over at BODI. I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk boxing, professional wrestling, the Miami Heat, especially given when the playoffs are coming. The end of the NBA season is what, a week and a half away, and it looks like the Heat are fighting for a playoff spot. For those who want to talk to you about all of those things, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter, folks. Ruckus99, RAWKZ99. Definitely said catch me on there, and hopefully we'll have pound for pound boxing report free. Hashtag free pound for pound boxing report. Hopefully you get it free
Yeah,
from the
I gotta.
gulag.
Yeah. I gotta get that situation resolved on Twitter. Just hack my stuff. Hack my stuff. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it at all. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is on Twitter. Is exclusively over at Brother JR 76 now. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, you can do so with yours truly on IG and on TikTok, Brother JR SC. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, we will do a recap of Joshua and Franklin, do a recap of Robeisy, Ramirez, and Isaac Dogboe. Again, those two are going to fight for the vacant WBO 126-pound belt. And we will do a preview of what is a loaded weekend of April the 8th. Going to give a rundown of as many fights as possible on the 8th on ESPN. In Newark, New Jersey, the return of Shakur Stevenson. He's going to fight Shuichiro Yoshino in a WBC lightweight eliminator. On the undercard, you're going to have Big Baby Anderson, Keyshawn Davis, Bruce Carrington, Kelvin Davis, all going to fight on that card. That's going to be in Newark, New Jersey. That's going to televise live on ESPN and ESPN Plus. On that same day in Tokyo on ESPN Plus, 4 a.m. in the morning, the return of Kenshiro Teraji. He was supposed to fight in a unification bout with Jonathan Gonzalez. Unfortunately, Gonzalez has had to bow out, suffering from pneumonia. Instead, Taraji is going to fight Anthony Olaskuaga over in Japan in Tokyo. Again, that fight is going to be on ESPN Plus. On the undercard of Taraji and Oscar Olaskuaga, you're going to have Tacoma Inoue, the brother, I should say, of Naoya Inoue. He's going to fight Laborio Solis for the vacant WBA bantamweight title. Again, that's going to be April 8th in Tokyo, early in the morning. For those who want to check out that fight on ESPN Plus. Also on the 8th in San Antonio, the return of Jesse Bam Rodriguez as he was a former WBC junior bantamweight champion. He's moving back. He's moving down to 112 pounds. Going to fight Marlon Tapalas. Not Marlon Tapalas, but Christian Gonzalez for the vacant WBO flyweight belts. On the undercard of that bout in San Antonio is going to air live on the Zone streaming service. The return of MJ Morajan Akhmadaliev. He's going to fight mandatory challenger Marlon Tapalas. MJ Akhmadaliev defending his unified WBA IBF 122-pound belts. Also on the 8th in Carson, California, on Showtime, the return of Sebastian Fundora. Fundora, interim WBC champion at 154 pounds. He's going to fight Brandon Mendoza. On the undercard, hard-hitting, highly ranked 140-pounder Brandon Lee is going to face Pedro Campa. So a loaded weekend of April the 8th. We're going to try to preview all of those fights. Again, for Gail, who's not with us this evening, if you want to talk boxing with her, you can do so over on NY Fights. You can check out her work on nyfights.com. And you can also chop it up talking to Sweet Science with her on Twitter at PR Pro San Diego. So for Gail, who isn't not with us, for Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber, this has been episode 397 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We'll see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone.